As we said before, and when you did your registration, this is for educational purposes only. So if you would like personal advice from either myself or Dr. Dunson, please go to the website and make sure that you sign up for an appointment. Well, we are back for Ask Dr. Kelly OMD. It is Monday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So that means that we are going to have a special guest with us tonight. And our special guest is a fellow Xavier University of New Orleans, Louisiana alum and a friend of mine since so many years ago. So happy to have you here. Dr. Felicia Dunson, please tell us a little bit about yourself and the top 3 things you want us to know about how to increase the resiliency for your children.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. And yes, XU rocks the house always. My top 3 things that I want you to know about resiliency. I want you to know the myths about resilience and why there has developed a cancel culture around resilience. I want you to know what the major components of resilience are, and also the secret component that you may not be aware of. And lastly, I would like for you to know some steps that you can go through in order to try to help build your child's resilience and also perhaps your own resilience if you need help in that area, which I always do.
Of course, we are so excited because what you're saying is not only for children, but it's for adults. And so it goes through the continuum of life. We're excited about hearing your topics and as well as the resources and the tools that we need so we can continue to build our resiliency. So go ahead and take it away. Let's hear what you got to say.
Okay, great. Well, I would like to start first by talking about definitions of resilience. And before I even really get into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I ended up thinking about this topic. I saw a post on Instagram that was posted by another mental health professional. And the post essentially said, if all children are resilient, then how come all adults need therapy? That was the post. And so that is how I started looking into this topic and looking into the whole cancel culture around resilience and what can I do in order to help people understand resilience, and also what can I do to help my own children with their resilience. So if you go up and look up resilience on Webster, which we can do on Google, you will find the definition. One definition says a capacity for a strained body to recover its shape and size. So basically, this is kind of like a rubber band definition of resilience. If you pull the rubber band, it will come back to its shape. That's not really what we're talking about here. Another definition on Webster's talks about the ability to recover from or adjust to misfortune or change. And that's really kind of where we are going with our topic of resilience and what we are trying to get into. And that is the general definition that you will find out there in the world. Now, my first encounter with resilience was really through a medical model of resilience, which talked about children being resilient because they have stem cells and they have structures in place to help them recover if they have a broken bone or if something goes wrong. These are nature's tools and tricks to help us to recover and to continue to thrive and to continue to survive. So we have that whole medical model there as well. And then I'm going to give you kind of a psychological definition, which is resilience is the capacity of a dynamic system to adapt successfully to disturbances that threaten system functioning, viability, or development. So you can see we're very wordy in psychology. We like to add a lot of stuff, but it's important to think about and listen to those words, because sometimes when we hear the word resilience, we think of a bouncing ball. We think, oh, we're talking about bouncing back. Well, that whole idea and concept of bouncing back like a ball or snapping back like a rubber band has led to some of the myths about resilience. So I'm going to go into the myths now. And the first one that I want to talk about is the myth that resilience is automatic. This is the idea that you automatically are able to bounce back, come back, just miraculously survive any kind of thing that happens to you. And of course, we know that this is not true. Even if we see someone who has gone through something and it seems that they have come back, it probably wasn't automatic. It probably wasn't without support, work. There's lots of other things behind the scene that we didn't see. So I'm sure we all know theoretically in our mind that resilience is not automatic, but it's very important to know that that's a myth, because sometimes we will judge ourselves that we have not automatically bounced back because of this myth that's out there. Another myth is that you should be able to be resilient. And if you're resilient, that means you don't need support. That means you don't need education. That means you don't need anything in place. This is also a big myth about resilience. Resilience is the capacity, the capability. That means that we have put in work. We have done premeditative things in order to make it possible for us to come back. Nature put things in place before we were born in order for us to be able to come back and grow back our bones and things like that. And as human beings, we also need to do things ahead of time in order to make it easier for us to recover, heal, and things like that. So that's the second myth. The third myth is that when you come back, you're going to be exactly the same as before. Now, of course, I mean, I'm a psychologist, so of course I'm going to tell you, no, that's not true. Of course, you have been changed, you have been affected, you have hopefully grown from your experience. And whether it was just a disappointment, something you didn't get what you want, whether it was something unexpected, any type of experience that causes you to have to recover, to have to be resilient, is going to change you in some way. And that does not make you lesser because you have not come back in exactly the same way. I think of this a lot of times when I think about my post-pregnancy body. Sometimes we see people on Instagram and things, and it looks like, oh, they just came back, no problem, it was easy, just exactly the same way as they were before. That does not often happen. I don't know if it ever really happens, but I'm not going to throw shade if it does, and if it happened like that for you. But it definitely didn't happen that way for me. And so I have to give myself grace and understand that my body learned and changed after that experience of pregnancy. And most experiences will cause us to change. All right. The other myths are that resilience can happen anytime, any place, and multiple times, meaning that no matter how many things happen to you, you're going to be able to bounce right back. This is just, that's just setting yourself up for unrealistic expectations. Of course, we've just talked about how if something happens to you and you need to be resilient, it's going to change you. If multiple things happen to you, each one of those things is changing you, and you've already been changed, so it's going to change you even more so. So it's very important to recognize that being resilient doesn't mean that you can just take on the whole world. It doesn't mean that you could just, battle through everything. It doesn't mean that you're a superhero. You're a person, and you are capable of surviving and thriving after you experience disappointment, period. That's the only expectation, that it is a possibility for you. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen automatically. It doesn't mean that you're going to be the same as before. It doesn't mean that if it happens multiple times, it may not take you longer to recover. Another myth is that it's immediate. Resilience does not mean that you are going to recover immediately. So it's very important to recognize that these things about resilience set us up for failure if we walk around with these expectations. And this is true for our children as well. If our children are thinking that, oh, they should go to the game and they play their best and their hardest and they lose the game, that they should automatically be able to just bounce back and shake it off and keep on going. Well, it makes sense that it's hard for them to go on, especially if they were invested, they put their heart and soul into it, they did their best, they're part of their team. It makes sense that they are disappointed and they feel bad, and you don't want them to feel bad because they were invested and now they feel a little bit sick about losing the game. We also don't want them to get stuck. So we're going to talk about some things to do to help them to get over that disappointment. But we want to acknowledge that when things happen to us, it hurts us, it can harm us, it can affect us, and that is okay. Okay, and then the last big myth that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to put these two together. The myth that if you have come back from an experience then that means that your recovery is permanent and that it was easy for you. Now, we all know sometimes people come in at the end of our recovery process, and so it looks like it's easy for us. But no, it wasn't easy. We put our work in, we took our time, and they just see the end. They just see the end results. And also, just because we've come back doesn't mean that we are automatically going to stay that way. Things can happen that can jiggle and shake and dislodge some of the recovery that we've made. And so coming back from a difficult time doesn't mean that it won't still be there. It doesn't mean it won't still come up. It doesn't mean that you may not still have to do some work related to that experience. All right. So those are the myths about resilience. And I just want to make sure that we all understand those. And then I'm going to move on to the different components of resilience. That most of the research has been done about resilience has been either individual components or socially based components. And individual components really refer to your personality characteristics, such as your executive functioning, that's your cognitive skills, your ability to have inhibitory control yourself, not fly off the handle, your ability to plan and problem solve, as well as your emotional regulation, which is a big component of resilience. So we have a whole plethora of research about how individual components contribute to resiliency. But that was one of the reasons why some of the kind of cancel culture came about in regards to resilience, because it made it seem as though the people that are not able to recover, that it's their fault, that it's something inherent in them. So that if they can't recover and bounce back from living in severe poverty, then that is something that's wrong with them. That's not something that's wrong with society. That's not something that we're not responsible for as a community. So we have those individual characteristics that you could consider to be protective factors. But we also have another big component of resilience, and that is the social component. That is the quality of relationships, that is interpersonal connections, that also make up a big part of resilience and actually kind of influence how those internal protective factors really are mobilized by the individual. And so because affective supports, that sense of feeling like you belong, that sense of feeling valued, that sense of feeling valuable, also contribute a big part of our resiliency. That's really what we're going to talk about, kind of how you, as part of your relationship with your child, how can you contribute to their understanding of disappointment? How can you contribute to how they respond to disappointment? And how can you help them come back stronger than ever because they've grown from it? All right, so I'm going to move on to some of the steps that I suggest that you take in response to if your child has a disappointment. The first step that I would say is give them an opportunity to be disappointed. This can be very difficult for parents because we kind of want to shelter and protect them. We want to take care of them. And so we may not give them as many opportunities to take a risk, to go after something that they may not be completely ready for, that they may not be completely prepared for. But part of being a parent is also giving them the opportunity to have agency and to get out there and try things. And so the first step is to actually give them the opportunity for disappointment. You can do this through all kinds of things, teams, activities, participating in community. There's lots of different avenues for letting your child get out there, show some agency, and to do things that they are inspired to do. After you've given them the opportunity, if they are disappointed or if something happens that is detrimental or they feel like was detrimental, then the next step is really to recognize that there's a problem, recognize that something tap into them, recognize that they didn't get what they wanted, recognize what their feelings are, that they're experiencing pain, disappointment, and helping them to identify that yes, this is a problem, but it's a problem. It's not the end of the world. It's something that we are going to have to resolve. And that doesn't mean just negate their problems. It doesn't mean discount their feelings. It's very important for children to feel heard and seen, and we want to make sure that we are validating their feelings and their thoughts. After doing that, we want to help them to understand and recognize and separate themselves from their goal. That if they, for example, were trying out for cheerleading, this was one of my big disappointments growing up. I tried out for the cheerleading squad. And if they try out for the cheerleading squad and they did not get on the team, we need to help them to work through what happened. What was the real problem? Why didn't they make the team? Why was there that disappointment? What was the disconnect? And understand that, but just because they did not reach that goal doesn't mean that they don't have characteristics and that they don't have behaviors that are valuable and that you are valued. And it also doesn't mean that that's the end of the goal. If that's still their goal, then we need to shift and try to figure out a different way to approach the goal. So the next step then would be, what can we learn from this experience? Talking to your child, talking through the problem, talking through the experience, talking through their preparation, and helping them to really identify what their real true goal is. Because sometimes children get caught up in the steps. They get caught up in, I would need to make straight A's, instead of thinking about, I want to attend this school, or I want to major in this major. They're focused on, I have to make straight A's in order to do that. And that's not necessarily the case. It's very important for children to understand that there are lots of different paths to the same destination. So if they really know what their goal is, then we can start to really think divergently. We can really start to think about different avenues, different ways to get to that goal, and help them to start to build up a new strategy for pursuing what they want to do. So what can we learn and what can we do different? The next step would be problem solving. So now that we know what we want, now that we know what happened, how can we solve that problem? How can we make a difference so that when we approach this goal the next time, we're not doing the same thing? We don't want to do exactly the same thing and get exactly the same outcome. So we need to think divergently. We need to diversify. We need to come up with new strategies, new resources, new tools. We need to think outside of the box. We don't have to do things the same way as everybody else, especially if we're talking about things in the academic setting. Sometimes our children get caught up in how Susie and Johnny and Jane did it, and we don't all have to do it the same way as Susie, Johnny, and Jane. So now we're problem solving, we're coming up with our strategy, and then we're ready. We have everything we've done. We recognize ourselves, we acknowledge our own talents and skills, and that our talents and skills may be different than Susie, Johnny, and Jane. And so our approach can be different. We have our resources. We have talked to family and friends who have been through a similar situation. We've listened to their stories. We have pursued information and education through the library or through the internet. We are prepared, and now our child is prepared, and we're encouraging them to get out there again and recognize that you might get your goal, you might not, and being honest about the possible outcomes so that they're prepared both for success and that they're prepared for another disappointment. And we've gone through this process, and now if we have another disappointment, we know what to do. And if we have success, we know how we got our success, so that the next time we have a goal, we know how to approach it and get a success again. And we're ready to lean in and go for it and get after it.
Love
Okay,
it.
thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know what? The steps that you talked about, a lot of us do this on a regular basis, but the way that you broke it down for us, it just makes so much sense. And you see, through each one of these steps, but I just didn't know what the actual steps were. So now you have given a systematic checklist. So we know every single time, okay, this is what we need to do. It may not be in the same order. And like you said, you don't want
Right.
to do this every time, but you have a checklist. So you know, okay, this is how we need to get through this situation. So thank you, Dr. Dunson, for all of
Thank
that
you.
excellent information. All right, Viva Lifers. So my Viva Life VIPers, if you have a question, you already know you get to ask your question first. And then we will have our general admission ask their questions. And I'm going to start us off because I don't see anybody have a question yet, but I know somebody will come up with one. So that be the chat, or you can raise your hand and decide and come off mute and you can ask your question. So just choose which way you would like to do that. Question from me. So like you were saying, so my son, he's 9 years old, and I don't know how many disappointments he's actually had because I feel like he gets everything, right? But appointments, can you just go over that, maybe one or two things that I need to do with him right off the bat? Like when a disappointment comes his way, he doesn't get something that he's been trying to get.
Yes, I mean, I think the first thing is just to acknowledge that it's difficult and it's hard for him not to reach his goal or not to get what he wanted, and that it makes him feel bad or sad or mad, and ask him to voice his own emotions and then validate those emotions for him. And then after you validated his feelings, then ask him what he wants to do next. And hopefully he wants to come up with a way to pursue that goal again in the future. Or he may have another goal that he wants to pursue. That would also be a great response. And if so, then we can work through the steps. And starting with figuring out what happened the first time, why he didn't get what he wanted. And then what do we need to do in the future in order to try to get what you want? Those are the first two things that I would do.
That's good. That's good because I'm thinking right now he's trying to get his PS5 and he comes back with these negotiations. I'm like, I'm loving this negotiation skill that he's developed because he hasn't been able to get what he wants. So I'm like,
That's excellent. Yes.
are really good. We so appreciate
and
you being here, which means, I got to ask you back. So when you send the text message or the email, the answer is yes, right?
of course, Kelly. Always yes for you.
Awesome. So thank you all for being here. Dr. Dunson, can you tell us how to get in touch with you?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram and on Facebook at Felicia TV Society. That's my handle on both of those. And also you can come to my website, FeliciaTDunson.com. And I have articles and things up there to help you talk about diversity with your child mostly. And just in case you're wondering, resilience is a diversity topic because it's all about thinking differently than you did before.
You always drop the gems and bring the gems. She helped me through COVID with my child, my family, myself, the whole thing. And so that's the reason why I'm still here today, because of Dr. Felicia Dunson. All right, y'all, this is Dr. Kelly OMD. You can find me on drkellyomd.com, at Dr. Kelly OMD, and at Viva Life Health Hub. We do this every Monday, Ask Dr. Kelly OMD, at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a new topic every week. And of course, we bring back our superstars. So Dr. Dunson will be back. That being said, have a wonderful evening, and please like, share, subscribe. Make sure that that in that registration, there's a link to all the offerings that we have, and we want to see you back again. Have a wonderful evening, and don't forget to do what? Viva Life. All right. Thank you for being a part of the Viva Life experience. I'm Dr. Kelly OMD, board certified OBGYN and healthcare executive. If you like what you heard, then please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. The reason why is because we are trying to educate, encourage, and inspire 1 million people to live their healthiest and wealthiest life. And this is what we're bringing you. We're bringing you educational videos. We're bringing you podcasts. We are bringing you webinars with subject matter experts, including myself, about the topics that affect you the most. So go ahead, like, subscribe, and share. We are everywhere. Have a wonderful day. Viva Life.